I want to talk about fighter pay. And the reason I want to talk about fighter pay is twofold. Number one, Logan and Jake Paul are talking about it again. This seems to be the tune that Jake Paul is playing, and he's playing it quite cleverly because he's using it to get himself into fights with MMA fighters that he thinks he can beat. Obviously, case in point, Ben Askren. Now, Dana probably made a mistake letting Ben Askren go and fight Jake Paul, because he opened the gate. And Jake Paul is now made himself semi-relevant in the MMA world, and here I am talking about him, so I guess I'm part of the problem. But in any event, fighter pay. Now, he's basically turning around saying that Tyron Woodley can come and fight me and make the biggest payday he's ever had. Well, yeah, he probably can. He probably can. Because it's a one-off event, isn't it? It's a one-off event against someone who has a massive following. Jake Paul has a massive following. Mainly because of his brother. But then he jumped on the back of that and rode his coattails and built up his own following. I'm not hating on that. That's fantastic. If I could do it, I would. But if you put that fight on every week, after 2 weeks, no one would watch it. No one would watch it. And people don't want to watch Jake Paul because he's charismatic, he's handsome, he talks well. Those aren't the reasons they want to watch him. They want to watch him to see if he can actually do it, or they want to see him get hurt. Those are the only two options. Or the third option, you're an idiot who watches his YouTube videos and thinks he's the best fighter in the world. Those are the only three reasons you watch a Jake Paul fight. So I understand the draw because I've been in that myself. I do want to know if he can beat Tyron Woodley. And then if you pick someone a little bit better than that afterwards, I probably want to know that as well. If he signed up to box Floyd Mayweather, which is what his brother just did, I wouldn't watch it. I didn't watch Logan versus Floyd in the first place because it's too stupid. The gap's too big. When you shorten that gap, it becomes compelling. So that's the first reason. If Tyron Woodley is fighting a ranked person in the UFC, that only really appeals to MMA fans. Tyron Woodley has not descended the sport, or transcended the sport. Descended is definitely the wrong word. Tyron Woodley has not transcended the sport. And I'm not blaming Tyron Woodley for that, but that's a fact, he hasn't. No one knows who he is outside of the MMA community. Unless, of course, you've watched Straight Outta Compton and like bad rap music. That was a cheap shot, sorry. But people know who Jake Paul is. So he has his own fan base. So if you pluck Tyron Woodley and put him next to Jake Paul gets someone he thinks he can beat up. That remains to be seen. I'm pretty sure he can't. But I said that about Ben Askren. And Tyron Woodley gets another payday. I guess my point is, there is some substance to the UFC fighter pay. I don't think it's as big as everyone's making out. Now that the company is publicly traded, we will get a greater look at their profits. We'll take a greater look at their losses. We'll take a greater look at their balance sheet. And we'll take a greater look at what they pay their athletes every year. Because they have to report that stuff to the SEC. They have to file their accounts. And they are public record. And we can look at them. That's how the stock market works. So we'll all find out very soon exactly what the split is. And people are saying, it's 18% and the NFL's 50% and the NBA's 48% or what. I don't know. I'm an idiot. I don't know anything about American pay, sports, NBA and NFL. It's not my thing. But what it says a fighter gets paid is not always what he gets paid. There are separate checks that get paid. There are pay-per-view points. There are shares of the gate. There is merchandise. There are other things that UFC fighters get. So when you go onto the dirt sheets in the morning and you look at what the commission paid George St. Pierre to fight, that's not what he got. And you rarely hear what they got. And usually you don't know what they got until either the end of the quarter or the end of the year, because they don't divvy up all of the pay-per-view points until the end of the quarter or the end of the year. Jorge Masvidal said recently that he's not fighting again until he gets paid at the end of the year, because at the end of the year he'll get his pay-per-view points from the Usman fight, and then he'll be free to fight. He's free to fight again now, but then he will fight again because he wants his money before he does it. So there are things that Jake Paul isn't talking about, and there are things that he doesn't know, and everyone paints Dana White out to be the problem and to be the bad guy. Dana White is employed. He may be a small owner in the UFC, obviously previously a bigger one, but he's employed. He has a job. He's got a show to put on. He's got to offer every fighter 3 fights a year. They're all under contract. He's not just underpaying them. He's paying them what the fighter agreed to. No one has to sign a contract. So when someone signs a 5-fight deal to get paid 150 and 150, what if they win 2 fights and then they're sitting in the top 5, they want more money? That's not how it works. Win the belt, yeah, sure. Contract gets torn up and you get a new contract. But the narrative that's being pushed and peddled by Jake Paul that the UFC fighters don't get paid enough. Jake, you fight every weekend and see if people watch it after 3 weeks. They won't. You're doing your thing, you're getting your money, it's very smart, it's very clever, but don't start trying to bring the UFC down. I don't understand what it would be out of. Is it out of jealousy? Is it because you're bored? Or is it because you want to fight some of their guys to make your name more relevant? I've got it. That's what it is. So, I started this. Look, Jake Paul is doing what he's doing. I don't like him. I think he's a bit of a tit. But he's making his money. He's been very clever about it. Fine, much respect. The UFC fighter pay thing, there probably is some credence to it, but it will not be as bad as people think, and everyone has a choice. There is Bellator out there. There is LFA. There is Ryzen. There are other organisations that people can go and fight at and get paid more money. But do you want to be at the pinnacle of the sport, or do you want to be fighting Jake Paul for a cheap payday? Let me know.